speaker, just because we are a little bit out of time, running a little behind schedule. So the next person we are going to bring up is Freddie, and so let us do that. So everyone, it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce you to Mr. Freddie Oritz Nishihara. This wonderful person, he is from Peru, from the city of Juan Asayo, I believe that's how you pronounce it. He is a lawyer at the University of San Marcos in Lima. He has a bachelor's in business administration. He also has done mediation work, mediation conciliation work in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He's won lots of awards and education projects, as well as peace cultural awards in Lima. And he's been just an advocate for mediation services. He's also done a master's in mediation conciliation from Mexico. It's just, I can't say enough. And what was very impressive about his bio is that he speaks so many different languages. He speaks not only Spanish, he speaks English, he speaks Portuguese, Japanese, wow, just it's such an honor to have someone so wonderful on our stage today. So thank you so much. I'll hand it over to the speaker now.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share, please permit me to share my view. I'm going to share, let's start. I'm going to start. Thank you very much. Thanks to my friend for inviting me to this second international meeting. Thanks to Christiana, thanks to you, Vinita, because I'm here. Well, I'm going to speak about the situation of mediation in relation to some special topic. The topic that I am going to speak about is a topic about the interculturality as a basis for resolving global conflict. You know that in today's world, we must recognize that without borders for the peace and without borders because the conflicts too, we must try to understand that interculturality is something necessary for our societies, especially trying to understand us and trying to share different concepts of life. Maybe some conflicts born because we don't understand ourselves, but it's inside the human being, where the conflicts must be maybe be processed, because the influence of the family, the influence of the parents, as this man says. One believes.
Change your light.
The other person has grown perceptions about himself and about us. And we have grown perceptions about ourselves and the other persons. It's a misunderstanding between interrelation between two individuals, two persons. And maybe that is the foundation for violence and conflict and war, because the people don't understand themselves in first term. Don't understand because that to the others. But this is because they have been they have been conditioned by the education, by the educative system, by the politics, by the religion. Inside the human being born his or her own conflict, and inside the human being borns too the conflict with others, the roots of the conflict with others, and the conflict with the mother nature, because this is especially actual today. We must to know that the conflict is not only with human beings. The conflict has a high level, which is the conflict with our mother nature, because it's necessary to understand we are not alone in this world. Because himself, because herself, because the education, because the family, society, all of them mixed and created a kind of identity which is a human being. Well, there are many answers, but let's start with some introductory concepts. Since the start of the times, human beings have diverse visions and ways for to understand the life, social relations, religion, moral, and forms of communication. This is natural around the world. It's not unnatural, it's natural because every human being has influences from outside. And this makes this interchange of cultures, this interchange of visions of life, started with maybe in some part of the history with the so-called discoveries of new lands, since a Western point of view. This Western point of view, influenced by the desire, especially the desire to get rich at any cost. So in this way started the colonialism. The relations between Europe with Africa, the relations between Europe or the Western countries with Asia, with America, and then Oceania. The relations between different ethnic groups, cultures in contact. That is the reason why sometimes some people believe that they are chosen by God to master the other countries. That is not correct. That is wrong. And we must continue to say the relations between ethnic groups, different ethnic groups, cultures in contact, must to be part of a good contact, a good relation of respect in relation to the other, of empathy. But maybe most of the times we don't have this feeling of empathy, of respect by the other's culture. This is the reason because we have many conflicts today. Well, the relation between ethnic groups, cultures in conflict could have 3 until 4 possibilities because we must understand. First, if one side is open to receive the others, accepting as they are, this is very strange, but only in a few cases in the history this has happened. But this person which received the orders is considered by all the who come from outside as weak person, as too ingenious, but the other side is contrary, opposite to accept any kind of good thinking. They don't think on horizontal relationships, and they are thinking of vertical relationship because they have the power to destroy or subdue, to conquer it, as conquered to the other people who saw that open the arms and giving the welcome to the newcomers could be peace, but that was not wrong. That was too much ingenious point of view. Goodwill, but ingenious in those times. This was going to originate in this case the natural conflict, because with the pass of the years, the natives are going to discover what were the real intentions of who came from outside. And there is not intercultural tolerance, because who conquered the country, they are going not to accept the others. There is no tolerance, acceptance. They do not consider the native culture as important. They consider the natural culture as inferior. Example, the Spanish. Here in Latin America, when he came here, they subdued indigenous people in a really short period of time because this situation and tried to use them as slaves. But first they tried to commit genocide because they didn't give them the suffer meals. They made suffer as slaves and caused many deaths, genocides, as we could say genocides. And who survived this kind of treatment or crimes or massacres were slaves. They didn't have to use their own culture with no culture. They should have to be assimilated, not integrated to the new society. Because as we want to see ahead, there is a difference between assimilation and between integration. If they didn't accept that, what they did was, and they do now in some countries, is to kill rebels, call them savage rebels, terrorists. That's the way to try to justify genocide and to try to suppress people which don't accept to be assimilated as slaves in the new order. If they want to keep their freedom and their culture, the resulted genocide or most of the population who survived was assimilated as citizens of second or third class. That is which has been happening since the start of the times. But it's time for to change, as I'm going to explain. The second way to try to understand this point is that both sides don't accept the other. The people who live in the territory and the people who comes outside don't accept themselves horizontally, for to treat them horizontally, and then start fighting. In this way, we have conflicts because both sides don't accept. But in this case, there is an ingenious way of trying to recognize the other. They understand that the others come with bad intentions. And the true way to establish this new kind of relationships between towns is that both sides are willing to accept their differences, and treat them horizontally. The result of this is peace. These are the three special ways to understand the integration, the migration of people around the world, the conquest of new lands by comers from Western countries to different nations in other continents. But there is a special case when one group tries to destroy systematically or disappear systematically to the other ethnic group, and then of that assimilate those survivors as slaves, to assimilate the survivors as slaves. The result of this kind of treatment between two nations is conflict. Of course, it's conflict, because nobody's going to accept to be a slave. The survivors have to see that their families were disappeared, killed by the conquerors, are not going to accept this kind of treatment. And what we can say? Well, the difference between the integrationship and the assimilationship. When two groups are in contact, maybe the group who receives the migrants, and is a big country as the United States, try two ways. The first and the most just and fair and clear and human treat to the newcomers should be try to integrate in not only in relation to the migrants, in relation to the native populations which exist in the United States before the coming of the Europeans here. before the coming in Latin America, before the coming of the Spanish. Integrate means that you must respect the others. It's derived from the Latin integral, which means whole. In mathematics, integers are discrete numbers as 1 and 0, 1, 2, 3. These numbers remain discrete and distinct. Even they come together in mathematical operations, but they keep difference. Yes? In this kind of situation, we can see that the peoples which practice integrationism accept the others, accept the comers, the newcomers, and who goes to other continent or to another country, accept the others and tolerate their own ways, their own culture, their own religion, and they live respecting and actually in a way which is horizontal. But this is the correct way for to try to integrate cultures, for to try to keep the peace. The other way is the most used in actual times by Western countries in relation to the native countries or by big countries as the United States, as Europe, in relation to the new migrants who come from Africa, who come from Asia. That is the assimilation. To assimilate, on the other hand, means to try to convert, to try to change the other identity in similar to your identity. Destroy the other identity and to try to introduce him as somebody which is part of your society. But the other maybe is not going to accept to be assimilated. By that reason, I suppose, which I went to the United States, many reservations still exists until today in Colorado, in the United States. And the Americans don't want to take contact with these people and speak and say, what are you going to watch to these savages? They don't have culture. They are dangerous. They like to drink alcohol every day. Don't go. They advised me that way. But I suppose which is not the correct way for to try to treat this conflict, this problem. I suppose that the United States, with their systems of mediation, pacification, of solved conflicts since the basis, should have integrated a long time before to the native Indians, to the native communities of Indians from United States, but until now they don't consider them similar. I think they must change their politics and not assimilate them. They must try to integrate them to the North American society with their own characteristics, respect them, and try them as human beings. The same is in Latin America with the Spaniards. The Spaniards here committed a lot of genocides against the native populations of Iberia, or the Imperium of the Incas, the Imperial Incas Empire. The Incas Empire, which was located in a big part of South America. It was called Tahuantinsuyo. But the Spaniards committed a lot of crimes and finally assimilated to the survivors with the force, But still until now, there is a kind of clown conflict between the natives which don't want to be assimilated, which want to keep their own culture, their own music, and by that there is conflict. The right way is not to assimilate, the right way is to integrate to the new nation, to our system. What similarities are between pluralism and multiculturalism? Plural society has one dominant culture. Other culture can coexist as minority culture peacefully. They can continue to practice their own culture. In this case, we are speaking of multiculturalism. A multicultural society has no dominant culture. There are different cultures. Yes, of course, they practice their own culture, tradition, but there is a single hegemonic cultural group in the society. It means that the politics which the others most obey are since the power of the law of the lands, the law of the country, the law of the politics. The others can live in peace, but can't decide the destiny of this kind of societies. This is multiculturalism. It's the model practiced in the United States especially, and in some countries of Europe. And we shame almost to say in our own Latin American societies, especially in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, we have this system where only 5% or 10% of the population with white skin control and manage the society in relation to the 90% of the population. And that something strange is with some natives from this 90% try to change their faces. Surgery operations try to change their faces for to look more Spaniards, try to put green eyes or blue eyes, and this is very so sad in all Latin American countries to try to be similar to the landlord, and this is not changing still. Because we need a change, very important change in the mind of our Latin American societies too, because we must accept ourselves as we are, with our own face, not to think that all culture produced is inferior, that all the products that were brought from Europe until now to eat meat, llamas meat, vicuñas meat, is something only for savage people. The people which has a high cultural level, according to the education in Peru especially, must eat only Western products. The Indian products don't serve. Nothing of the Indian culture is taking account. And I have wrote a book where I can show that the Incas culture practiced a system of mediation, a system of conciliation, according to the same former Spaniards who came here since the time of the conquest. They wrote books and they spoke and they wrote about the mediation system here in Peru. But now today's government is trying to erase all the former books, all the former history of the native populations here, and have shame. To speak in the native language here is to show that somebody is inferior. And here we have a politic of assimilation. And we are not speaking still, here is not multiculturalism, still this something wrong is created by that many conflicts in these Andean cultures, and all the white people and the people of cities and all the mestizos and all the people which are turned and changing their color of their skin with surgery, with operation, is to call them that they are terrorists. Terrorists, that's the name. We must understand that they are fighting to keep their own culture. Yes. Maybe other point of view is to consider that there are multiple cultures peacefully coexisting with one society. That is very ideal. That is the real ideal of peace. The peacefully coexistence, the horizontal coexistence. People in the society are not expected to assimilate to any other culture. All cultures are allowed to continue to practice their traditions, heritage, and values within the law. That is possible. Cultural blendings occur. It's very interesting that cultural blendings, mixing of cultures occur. That makes more richer a society, where one culture takes on features other cultures at the same time. That's very important to consider other cultures. Examples of cultural pluriculturalism, because this phenomenon of integrating cultures from two nations, from two different groups, is called pluriculturalism. For example, there are many cultures which exist in the United States, but if they all keep their own identity and the government doesn't interfere, the government doesn't suppress, doesn't try to impose its will, we will have groups which can be respected, which are interchanges their points of view horizontally. However, sometimes African, American, Vietnamese, Chinese, Hispanics are not always before in the same way that the Anglo-Saxons, because they participate in democracy, but not in the same way. Well, it's the same in nations like Canada and Australia. Maybe the phenomenon could be improved with a new point of view where the vision of nation which take a look at the other with empathy is going to be very important. The most important example of cultural pluralism was in Medina. Medina was an Arabic city which existed in ancient times. There in Medina during the management of the Muslims of Spain and part of other Europe countries, the Jews, the Christians would live in peace together, and there was no conflict. There were acceptance between these groups of religions, culture, foods, etc., etc. There are many historical examples of coexistence. The Austro-Hungarian Empire permitted too that many peoples could interchange and keep their language without punishment because the situation. This is very, very important because we need to practice interculturalism. The interculturalism means respect to the rights of the others, respect between human beings, because we must try to interchange the words tolerance and good communications as key words to keep the peace, the real peace. Yes, the successful communication can help to build better cross-cultural relationship. And we can construct and build new kind of societies and try to neutralize most of the conflicts. And in this way, the people can live in peace because there are no misunderstandings. Because when there is prejudice, when there is no communication, when the communication disappears or the communication is misunderstanding, you maybe will listen only the words, but you don't really know about the meaning of the words. What are they saying? Because the language is not only verbal, the language is to non-verbal communication. And the same way to try to understand the others is going to drive us to evit, to try to not to have conflicts, because we are going to have peacefully societies. That is why we try to get to a system when we are looking for the other with interculturality as a basis for to prevent unresolved global conflicts. Yes, an example of interculturality is that people of different roots, different nations, who understand themselves and try to understand themselves. The definition of intercultural communication includes both, as I said before, both verbal and non-verbal forms of communication. For example, an American business person which goes to another country may practice intercultural communication with a peer in Bangladesh if he understands the rules of culture in this country. And maybe they could enrich themselves spoken words and body language expresses sometimes, many times, which both parties in contact are trying to be friends, are trying to show that they want peace, they want to interchange knowledge, they want to interchange feelings, many things. The same, for example, in Japan, many years ago, when I was in Japan, living in Japan, Peruvian people who went with me to that nation usually don't take off the shoes when get inside the house. They usually get with the shoes inside the Japanese house, but the Japanese look at them and they didn't understand what was happening, why they didn't take the shoes off, but finally trying to understand to the others by empathy, told me, let them do that because maybe in their country that is usual not to take off the shoes. And the next time when the Japanese spoke to them as they could, the most friendly that they could, they say that in the culture, Japanese culture, do not take shoes off in the door before to get inside was not good for two reasons. The cultural reason and by health reason, because when you get inside the house, you come from the streets, which can be crowded or some disease, and by that, by prevention in health, you must take off your shoes. That is a question of culture and prevention to health prevention. Well, I'm going to resume all this that I have in front of you, telling you that the countries must to understand that to live in peace is to try to identify one with the other, because everyone has a different type